Hello and welcome to the Not a Guru podcast. I'm one of your podcast hosts, Tyler Smith, certified athletic trainer, certified strength and conditioning specialist. I'm also here alongside the prestigious Dr. Heidi Cook. We are here to help you with personal development, personal growth, and really building a foundation that lasts you your whole life. We're so excited you're here today, and let's jump in.
Howdy ho.
Good evening. How are we? How's the family?
We are Gucci.
Gucci. That's great. Look at that.
I am tired.
Tired. I am. Maybe that was like a half truth.
Yeah. No, I'm good. Overall, very good. The weather, while still cold, has improved enough to where there's not snow everywhere. So we've been able to get outside for our walks, which has been lovely. And I'm flying solo this whole week, which is
Single parent.
brutal. I, yeah. It's like, Sam works all day, but like the evening reprieve of him coming home is so nice.
So nice to just hand here, you take it right now.
Or even just like, even if there's not a big like handoff that happens, literally just like another adult.
Yeah, to talk to and to chorus with.
Yes. So anyways, yesterday was a breeze. Today was less breezy. So
That's
I'm
breezy.
feeling a bit tired today, but that's okay. 2 days down, two to go.
There you go. Gets back on Friday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Friday night though, so I do all day and nighttime routine and put down solo, and then he gets back.
Where'd he go?
He's in Florida for a work trip.
Oh, wow.
Work trip.
Trip.
No, it really is it is a meeting, but like I mean, they work all day and then they uh go out to nice dinners and play golf and
I mean, I
do
could
all
do the
sorts of fun
dinner. I
things.
don't think I've golfed in like a decade.
Really?
Yeah. Not even picked up a club.
I haven't golfed since I was like, I think I was like 2 months pregnant
Really?
because then it was winter. And then by the time like spring rolled around, I was massive, and couldn't really like swing a golf club around my belly. Um, Towards the very end, though, Sam and I went on a lot of like golf dates, trying to walk the baby out before my induction. Newsflash, it didn't work.
Did not
But I got
happen.
lots of steps in and just waddled my way around a golf course. And then once he was born, I was just, in newborn land, also not golfing. So I haven't
I'm just
golfed in probably, I don't know, right around a year.
I have just not great at it. I hit the ball very far right very frequently, and it just gets frustrating. And so I probably, and the other thing for me is like the time commitment is a lot. Like I really kind of laugh. I don't know where I would find 5 hours like in my day to go golfing anymore. Like it just doesn't
Yeah.
happen. But
Yeah. I was trying to figure out like how would I make that happen? But it's either got to be he's got to come along with, which likely is going to happen.
sure, probably not.
Or two, uh we need to find like an all-day sitter.
Yeah, all day. You're just here all day.
All day. But yes, I would love to golf again. Uh I wouldn't say that I am good. Uh Certainly not good, but I would say decent. I would say good for a girl, probably,
Good for her, girl.
which is sad to say. Like whenever I go um and golf like at Sam's work meetings and stuff, and people are always like, wow, like also surprised at like my golf abilities, but I'm kind of like, I appreciate it, but I also feel like the bar is so low
I was gonna say, is that
that it's like,
a compliment, or are you just like,
yeah,
wow?
yeah. But I will say, just to throw this out there, I did beat Sam by 1 stroke when we played Pebble Beach, and that is something that I will just have marked forever and ever.
Please
Sam and
put
I
it
are,
on your tombstone right next to him. Like, just
yeah,
beat him at Pebble Beach.
yes, 1 stroke.
One stroke.
Um, I eh, Sam and I are pretty comparable, I would say, in terms of like play. Um, I bet he has a leg up on me now because he's golfed a lot more recently. The thing I will say, so while I'm not good and I would classify myself as decent, I think I am good for how very little time I dedicate to it. I like rarely go to the range to practice, and I Sam golfs a lot more than me, but I probably golf, I don't know, before I was pregnant and everything. I don't know, 6, 7 rounds of golf a year.
Yeah, that's not a lot by any means, but
Yeah. So like I feel pretty good about like how decent I can show up and not make a fool of myself after like not having picked up a golf club for 3 months, which is pretty much how it always worked out.
there you go. Nice.
Yeah. How are you?
I'm good. Better week. It's the first week of school for
Mm.
us, which is always like just we joke around. It's like our practice week. Like, you're having practice, but like for us, it's just like this is practice. Like trying to get schedules put together, trying to get the days figured out, all that different stuff. And like I've mentioned before, with a drastic kind of shift in how the makeup of the team in track, where for those of you who don't know, there's a lot of different events. You have like throws, jumps, sprints, multis, mid distance, longer distance. And so we kind of changed the makeup of that. It's just been figuring out the puzzle. Like, you know what I mean? You had it all figured out because we'd had the same staff, the same makeup for whew, 10 years, 10 years. And then it all kind of shifted and changed. So we're just trying to figure out how it works. And, you know, the other thing is I've had, as part of my job, you're trying to keep the athletes healthy, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And I think one of the things that I still struggle with and came to the surface this week is sometimes you just have to deliver some real bad news,
Mm.
and it doesn't always go well. And it's hard because you're trying to toe this line between it is your job, they are upset, it is their career, and you try to have to not take it home with you and just affect you in the day to day because they get upset, you're upset for them, but you're trying not to allow their being upset to come as personal to you.
Yeah.
Because sometimes, I've had everything from tears crying on my shoulder to, you know, bargaining with God to, it's your fault, that's the coach's fault, it's, the world's fault. And so I think
Yeah.
sometimes those are the ones that are just a little bit more rough to deal with throughout the course of the week. And
Yeah.
although I did luck out, we have a meet this weekend, but only half our squad's going. So I don't have to leave. So that's good. I'm not
That's
going
good.
to Spokane, which is not the worst place we travel to, but by far not the most fun and exciting. I have a lot of
Oh, Compton.
Spokane. I have some terrifying stories from Spokane that will just are not podcast appropriate, but still have shook me to my very core from Spokane. So anytime I'm ex-nate on that trip, I'm not really sad about it.
I mean, we grew up, what, 2.5 hours from Spokane? I feel like that was always like the place to go, like if we were going like big back to school shopping,
It's Spokane.
we'd go to the big city. We'd go to Spokane.
Do people
Uh
still do that? That was a massive thing for us growing up.
yeah, it
Back to
was a
school,
huge
like
thing.
we used to go to like some mall. There's one in Nampa, there's one in Boise, and you would spend all day just
Like I need new
Clothes
shirts, new
showed. Yeah.
jeans, new shoes.
And you couldn't wear them until school started. Like
Mm-hmm.
that was the rule I had. Like, nope.
Mm-hmm.
You'd have these cool new clothes, shoes, shirts, jeans, whatever. And they're like, nope, not till school starts,
Not
not
until
till
school
school
starts.
starts.
Yeah, that was our thing too. I don't know if that's gone and done now that like I don't know, are malls still a thing? Like do
We have
people
them
like
all.
go to the
We do,
mall?
but I went the other day, like, to grab something. Quentin wanted to go. I mean, and it was around Christmas, so it was definitely busier, but it was not the hangout and the crowd that it was before.
Yeah, I saw a video of like the mall in like peak 90s and it was like a bunch of teenagers like
Oh, for
hanging
sure.
out and stuff after school and I was just like, man, after school getting a hot pretzel, hitting the mall, just a different world back then.
Well, and I think the other thing I've noticed, I don't know around, like a lot of the big stores have like pulled out or disappeared and they're just not there
Mm-hmm.
anymore. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, there's a couple, but we used to have like one big store at the end of every section. And I
Yeah.
would say about half of them are gone now. Like you just don't have the foot traffic or the people that do the brick and mortar anymore.
As a kid, where did you typically like buy your clothes from? Like uh what were your like what was your go-to? I feel like that says a lot about like what kind of kid you were.
Well, I didn't really have a choice where I was going to buy clothes.
Mm.
So I want to say one of the biggest ones that sticks in my head was Mervin's.
Mervin's? What the hell
Yeah.
is Mervin's?
Mervin's was a store like in Boise, like it was in the mall.
Uh-huh.
Mervin's for sure.
Was it like a JC Penney?
Kind of, yeah, a little bit like
Are
that where
JC
it was,
Penney still in business? I think
I don't
so.
I don't
It
know.
is.
Where else would we
Mervin's.
go? Mervin's, lots of it. It was like that in between where it was not like Kmart shopping for clothes, but it was
Yeah.
not like, so in Boise, it was not like the Bon Marché where it was like super expensive and you're like, we can't
The
afford.
Bon Marché. Oh my God, what was it? One day only at the Bon Marché.
Yeah, exactly. I wasn't in there. I couldn't afford that. You know what I mean? We were in
I
a,
didn't know the Bon Marché was an expensive store.
it is. It's got expensive clothes.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Like we used to, all my shoes, all my shoes growing up came from one store. Can you guess what it is?
Pay less.
Yes, Payless. All my shoes came from Payless.
I was there was a Payless in our mall and it was like let's see what we had like a Journeys,
I remember
uh
that one. Although that was like a
Payless and something
15
else.
year difference. We didn't have journeys when I was at least
Oh,
15 years.
yeah. Mervin's, wow. I gotta figure out what that was all about. I went through phases, like, and I think if I remember correctly, the majority of like my back to school stuff, like we would just crush Old Navy.
Oh,
Uh, but then like we were allowed to get like one or two things from, and then it was like a rotating door depending on like how old I was, whether those one or two things came from American Eagle, uh
ooh.
Hollister, Abercrombie, or I I always said called it Aeropostale.
Oh, I know what you're, yeah, I know which one I don't know how
Um,
to say that. I was not in
and
any
it
of
was like
them.
a rotating door, like what was in, and we would get like a couple of things. Like I remember getting like, you know, remember when like polos, like layering polos
Oh,
were
yeah, like the
cool?
pictures with like five layering polos. I didn't do
Yes.
that. That was kind of after my time, but for sure I
Yeah.
remember seeing that.
So I didn't do the layering polos, but I went through the polo with like the lace tank top underneath look. Um and those I always got from Abercrombie and then like or PacSun. I went through
Oh,
a big
yeah, oh,
PacSun
yeah, yeah,
phase
yeah.
too.
I went there a
Yeah.
lot, a lot.
Oh my God. Wow. What a blast from the past. I could talk about this all day long. Let's actually get on topic. A great stress reliever for many is retail therapy.
Retail there, but that can get you in trouble. So we're
But that
not
can get you in
suggesting that.
trouble, that's for sure. So, um, Tyler and I were going through our list of topics that we have to discuss. and we came across the topic of stress management and what that looks like, balancing stress management while running a business, while excelling in your career, whatever that looks like. And I was like, ooh, maybe we should put a pin in that episode because I haven't been doing a very good
Good
job
job.
of managing my stress. And then I was like, you know what? That's probably exactly why we should record this episode. Because A, it's not about us being the shining example. Do we want to lead by example? Absolutely. Do we fall short? Absolutely. And so I wanted to talk about this from a perspective of kind of it coming in waves, I guess. But um also to maybe work through some of why I'm struggling to manage
We're just
my
going to do a
stress
session
and
right here for Heidi.
Tyler as well.
That was me.
Excuse me. I think you had some fessing up to do before we hit record as well. But maybe as we work through some of our sticking points, hopefully that will also be well.
I think the interesting part for me as we went through this is, yeah, I mean, this is probably something that hits home a lot for me because just hands down, it's probably one of the most difficult aspects of what I do out like in my job. Um, the world of like collegiate athletics. And we always kind of joke, not joke, but there used to be, and there was this buzzword about like work life balance. And we've talked about it a little bit and almost come to the conclusion like for I don't know if this might sound like a negative, but for us in collegiate athletics, that's not really a thing. Like you can get better at it, but you're never going to achieve, perfect work-life balance. And so I think in some ways, um, analyzing some of that, like where your stress is coming from and what is realistic is probably one of the things that I've had to do the most because it's like, you know what I mean? Like really analyzing it. Like if I want the perfect ideal situation, like it may not be in this job setting. It may be forced to do something else as well.
Yeah, and like kind of like what you said, like trying not to take things home with you, and just like, you know, I think what's interesting about collegiate athletics is like the relationship that you have with your patients, with your clients, right? Like however you want to label them with your athletes is so different than any other profession within the field where you see a caseload of patients or clients and you see them a couple of times a week for X number of weeks and then it's over. But like in collegiate athletics, you are literally seeing them every single day, multiple times a day, uh, for 4 years,
Yeah.
and
If
it's
you're
just a
lucky.
very, very different, uh, it's so different. And so when you talk about like, work-life balance, when those are the types of relationships that you have with your clients, I think it's really hard to keep it separate because your life gets like so interwoven with theirs. Because you're spending all day every day within the athletic department, they're spending all day every day in the athletic department. The majority of your awake hours are being spent there, and the majority of them spent, playing whatever sport. And so I think like that in itself makes it an even like deeper layer, an extra level of challenging when it comes to managing your stress and like creating boundaries around work, so that you can manage your stress.
Well, and I think the unique part about what I do is I get these, and I'm going to use this phrase quite intentionally. I get these kids when they're leaving their house for the first time.
Yeah.
I really don't care what the law or any human says. 18-year-olds are not adults. I've seen they're not the non-developed prefrontal cortexes making really bad decisions at all times.
Yeah.
And so you kind of take on this dual role as like a healthcare provider in your athletic training world for their injuries, but you're also like trying to guide these kids through life because they don't get it. They're not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
From everything from like, I'm sick, what do I do? Because their parents have taken care of them to, they're here by themselves. So for a lot of times, and like, while the stress level may not be as high as say like my wife working in a hospital on someone who's coding or like doing that stuff, there isn't that finite, I'm off, my shift's done, and I can just like wipe my hands and walk away with it. And that's a different type of stress where you're like, yeah, I'm kind of always on,
Yeah.
except when I'm, like not reachable, but like it creates this layer where you have to have some management. And there's been a lot of times in my career where you just have to learn to control what you can control and then just accept some of those things that you can't, because
Yeah.
otherwise the stress just builds and then your bucket is full all the time. Or like, and I've noticed this before when I was going through some stuff, like your bucket gets so full that something short and minute and small feels overwhelming. Like just, oh my dear God, like the mail or like, the groceries were not delivered when I wanted it to. And it goes from like, oh, they should be here soon to it ruined my whole day. And so those type of things are like, how can we manage a little bit? And I thought about you a lot is, I mean, it's a little bit similar, like being on all the time with us, but like while I've only had a small like interactions and trying to help, like I imagine building a business like that, like you have, is like it never feels like there's a time where something should not be like done.
There's literally always something to be
Can be
done.
done. Yes, exactly. And it's like, how do you prioritize, or how do you say enough's enough? Because knowing you and knowing a lot of people, you just go, 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 go. And then all of a sudden that cliff is coming real fast. And if you don't slow down, you're just going to go off of it. And then you're, going to find yourself in a situation where you're finding external, like different methods, like we joked about, like retail therapy or, like some way to manage the stress that is probably not healthy, but you have to learn to not get there and have to use those coping mechanisms in the first place.
Uh, yeah. And I've found that many times. Yeah, I think the perpetual nature of both of our jobs, I think is where a lot of the stress comes from, at least for me. Is that like always reachable, always something to be done. The other thing that is challenging for me ever since I um started this business was like, a lot of what I do happens on my phone. And so like not only am I spending a lot of time on my phone, I'm managing a lot of like incoming things through my phone,
Sure.
whether that be DMs, emails, comment, like, you know, even like some of the automations that we have, like I set up through my phone. Anyways, like it's just a lot. And so then when I have like text messages or phone calls or whatever like that come through that are not work related, it just feels like more, like even though it's
Sure.
not, and I know that it's
Oh,
not, and like a conversation with my friend is very different than, you know, tackling something for work, but like when those notifications come through, I it's sometimes overwhelming because it just feels like more getting piled onto the plate, even though it is different. And I think that is also like just puts on display how like messy those boundaries get when it is just in your face 24/7. Um, and so I tried really hard in 2023. 2023? Yeah. 2023 was like the year that I really tried to like set some really hard boundaries around communication, with clients, communication, or through specific apps, setting up like app blockers and things, so that I could actually like be off. And I had to be very intentional with doing all of that. And then that was really helpful. Um, but I think it also can like easily swing in the other direction where then I was just like putting boundaries around everything on my phone, and I was just like really bad at communicating for like a year.
Well, the one thing I was going to say, and correct me if I'm wrong, when you go through and like your work is related to your phone, so you're looking for notifications or like that is a work, like you've set that up so it's notifying you that there's something work related in there. It goes like when you're first building a business, it goes from like exciting because it might be a client, it might be a comment, it might be, and
Yep.
then as it starts to stack up, it goes from this excitement to I have a task to do.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you're behind and you're hearing those, all you're thinking is like, I got something else to do. I got something else to do. And then the downfall of it, it's almost like that Pavlovian like response. When you get it, it might be your mom wishing you happy birthday, but when you hear that ding or that notification, you go straight to now I have something else to do from work. So instead of
Ugh.
being exciting, it is another task that is coming at me while I'm not ready. And I always use the analogy, especially for my work. It's like when you get your head above water and it's just the next wave that's coming and you got to tread even harder to get above it to make sure it doesn't, give you a face full of water, or you just have to take it and let it wash over you and hope like you have more distance from the next one.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's a great like summary of it. So I basically this year I basically said to hell with the like timers and stuff because those were not effective for me. I basically just took outside of like text messages, um I took all notifications off of my phone. Um so that like if I'm getting a notification, it's typically like for something that um needs to be addressed. Um and then uh emails. I so text messages, calls, and emails from I think I can like click like known people. So like if they were to email me, I'll get a notification for it. But if it's anything else or anybody else, like I just check those apps at like specific times during the day and address all of the notifications that are sitting in there. But I don't have stuff pop up on my phone anymore. And that has just like cured so much overwhelm for me.
Did I make the known list?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Just checking. No, and I think there's a lot of, I mean, it's an overwhelming thing for everyone in general, especially, but for you in particular, where some of your livelihood comes from social media and like every time you post something, I'm sure there is positive, negative, and everything in between. And to get that many notifications would be almost exhausting throughout the course of the day when one person comments and you have another one and you have another one. And I think it goes to the topic of like overstimulation or over task management and stress and how those two can, correlate, especially with, the all the information and nonstop phone stuff that we do these days. And so it was interesting here to hear that like I've heard some people say they like timers, but you kind of said it really just at the end of the day didn't end up helping you as much as you thought.
Yeah. Yeah. And so like but like that's one pocket of stress, right? Like
Right.
that, and that's what's so interesting, and like that's one way to manage the load, like the incoming load,
Mhm.
right? We talk about when I talk about stress management, I talk about um mitigation, right? So how do you mitigate what is coming in to
Yeah.
the into the system? And then and so like that's just what we talked about, right? Like
Yeah.
notifications, uh setting, time boundaries, whatever it might be. Like those are all great ways to mitigate what's coming in. Delegation is another great way to like mitigate what's actually coming in. Um, but then there's stuff that is going to come into the system regardless, right?
Yeah.
Because it's a job. It's you know you can't just do all the fun things about your job and
Yeah, I
ignore
wish.
all
Yeah,
of the hard
exactly.
things. And so I eh, once there's stuff coming in, then how do you personally manage that stress load that is inevitable, right? That just comes with your job, parenthood, what have you. How do you then manage your own personal stress level once you've tackled how much or the volume that's coming in? How do you manage what's in the system itself? And I think that's like the secondary important piece to the puzzle.
Yeah, I think one thing that I learned, and I'll kind of steer it back to a little bit of our roots, is like I want to, and this is something I firmly believe in, and I know everyone's going to look at it a little different. Like I need to make the bucket with which I can handle the stress like as big as I can.
Mm-hmm.
And that for me is a conscious effort of doing a couple things, making some time for myself throughout the course of the day to realize like if I am, like if you're always constantly doing things for other people and you're not, taking some time for yourself, like your ability to manage stress and actually be there for other people gets less and less over time, because your bucket's just not big enough to hold everything.
Yeah.
And so a lot of that for me is taking time for myself, which can look a lot different for a lot of people, but that is like just on a personal note, trying to be the healthiest version of myself that I can and being a little bit selfish and like I take time to work out for myself every day because it allows me to one take some of that water in the bucket out, but also like my bucket just like I'm not as fragile. Like I feel like I can take on more and I feel like it allows me to grow and to solidify and just be a better version of myself. And it translates to, I want to be a better, husband, father, all that stuff because I want to take care of myself and I want to, and I find it hard. Like I've worked with some clients and I have some, people I work with where you just can tell where when stress is building and you just aren't the person that I think you're meant to be, or your health isn't good and you're just overall like not a healthy person, like you just can't manage that much and they get sick, they get constantly like aches and pains and like all those things, which just I mean, yeah, is working out and doing that every day a stress, and it can be kind of like Heidi can attest to this, it's not always fun, we don't love to do it, it's really effing hard, but it just builds this redundancy and resilience. So when those other things come, and I can't remember what it is, but I think they say the average person who takes care of themselves and looks after their health takes something like 7 to 10 less sick days a year, um, just because you're more robust. So I think that is also something, like you said, you want to block some of the stuff coming in, but you want to make yourself as durable and resilient to handle those things. And some of it is health and some of it is going through it, making a game plan and just life. You know what I mean? Like having that ability to, I've gone through this, I can walk through this and I can do it again.
Yeah. I think like uh while it might feel stressful, encouraging yourself to do hard things,
Yeah.
I think like raises your threshold to handle stress.
Oh, 100%.
And when we try to bubble wrap ourselves, so like this is where I get kind of like a little bit pissed off around the like self-care
Sure.
space,
Yeah, no, I agree.
is I think we get so like we try to manage, or no, we try to mitigate we try to keep anything hard or stressful away out of our system. If it's bad energy, I don't want it. If it's, this or that, like, I don't want it. Like, I'm just going to sit in my bubble bath and, doing this would be too hard. I don't have the capacity to do this. I don't have, whatever. When we have bubble wrapped ourselves so much, anything that is then challenging, uncomfortable, causes any sort of discomfort, we can't take and tackle in stride. It totally rocks our system. So now our threshold for stress, what's going to send us into fight or flight, what's going to send us into, you know, or just reduce our capacity to handle that stressor when we basically bubble wrap ourselves and protect ourselves from any sort of stress. And that's why there's that positive type of stress, the eustress, right? That like helps create resiliency. It help like think about it in terms of uh weightlifting, right? Like your body responds to the load that is placed on it, and then it adapts. And that is true for, our musculoskeletal system. That is also true for our psychology, for our, psychosocial, psycho-emotional state, as well. And so as we can continue to do hard things, we are able to move through tasks of that nature with more ease. And so it is a delicate balance between taking on enough, saying yes to things, opening yourself up to challenges. And I think, like Tyler said, a great way to do that is through physical exertion, through exercise, because not only are you asking more of your body, you're showing yourself, like, you are giving yourself that positive relationship of, I am rising to a particular challenge and I am achieving that, right? That does amazing positive things for our psychological state. It also has, a biological component in terms of stress management and releasing those happy, feel good hormones that helps us manage, some of the more negative things that we deal with on a day-to-day basis. So all that to say is there is a delicate balance between doing too much and allowing too much on the plate and also not doing anything to manage the load that's there. But also, we can't swing the pendulum the other way, because then anything that is even remotely stressful whatsoever is going to send you into a spiral, because you've just hyper protected your space, and you don't have the capacity for hard things anymore.
Yeah, and I was thinking when you were speaking with that, and I agree. I wanted to give them something, and I'm going to steal this from someone else. Is if you're not there yet, if like physical activity is kind of a hit and miss for you, another thing you can do when you're in this place and you're going through stress, and I think it's something like I know I need to get better at it. I know a lot of people do is, and maybe you can do this to yourself. I can see an avenue where you could look at yourself in a mirror, and I think that might be a little awkward, but I think it starts with you recognizing either in yourself or maybe like if we're business partners and um I can tell that Heidi's going through a lot of stress, and I can see it, and I could see it between her, like what she's doing with work and what she's doing with her kid. In taking a minute with the people you work with your spouse, with another person, and just honestly sitting down and recognize, like telling them, like, I recognize that you're going through a tough time and this is stressful. And just telling that person that you see their efforts, you acknowledge what they're doing, and you appreciate like all the things that they're going through this time with whatever it is, and like just reassuring them, like, no matter what happens, you and I know that we got this together. So like, I know it sucks, but know that it sucks together and that like I'm with you on this. And even though like, it might be like particular, like your work stress of your spouse, you're still living it. You're still there with your partner. You still feel it when you come through the door. You're understanding it. And I think sometimes we just, especially the people who don't want to talk about it or ask about it, are probably the ones that need to hear that the most because they're probably internalizing a lot of it. And, I would just say there's a lot of times where just that words of like affirmation or them, you telling them that you're in it there and you recognize it.
Just
Just
gone.
gone.
Now you're back.
Am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Okay. So yeah,
Right at the end of that sentence, you cut out.
I just meant I was just sorry for that technical difficulty. I just feel acknowledging and helping those people, especially those who don't really, ask for help, is one of the biggest ways you can relieve stress without them having to like actually go out and ask. It's something that we can acknowledge for each other.
Yeah, I agree. I agree 100%. Um, I'd love to. How would you rank yourself right now on a scale of 1 to 10? Uh, 1 being garbage, 10 being elite. How well do you think you are currently managing your stress?
That's a good question. I would retrospective, over the last year with everything, I could tell you 100% last year when we were going through changes and like last spring, I was probably like at a 1 or a 2. Like I was just stressed all the time and I could actively feel little things just like stressing me out. And I would sit there and be like, this is not that big of a deal, but I could like, it was a physiological response when I would get stressed. I could feel it like,
Yeah.
okay, I'm stressed. And I was like, what? I'm not stressed, but I knew it was because there was so much. Um, and the hard part for me in answering this question, and this is not a bragging point, but it's just like the reality is it's always mental things that stress me out the most. Like I've built up a fairly resilient workouts regiment. So like physically I can handle a lot. Physically it's not that big of a deal usually ever. But when the mental things come, I think that's where I can start to feel stress. So I mean, we with some of the changes, it's still there. I would probably give myself this is not great, like a solid maybe like 6 or 7. I'm not fantastic at it,
That's a big
but
improvement from last year.
the ability to go through some stuff, yeah, and like just change a little bit of the environment and work through some stuff has helped. But that still doesn't mean, there's a lot of times where I still have to find different mantras or different things that, like Lindsay will remind me because I do let that stress build still. But, I mean, it helped a lot today. Just a quick side note, we were at our spring meeting for athletics today. It's like our spring fling kickoff. And our athletic director, Jeremiah Dickey, who I have a lot of respect and admiration for. He's done amazing things and he's a good leader. I mean, he came up and kind of just talked about some of the stress in his life that he keeps buried down and he got kind of emotional doing it. And it's like, you kind of understand that it's there for everybody. And like, we all deal with it in different ways. You could tell when he's stressed. He's got the crazy job and he'll be like running up and down the hallways. And certain days I get a fist bump and certain days I get a head nod because it's like stress is there. But I think it's always present. And I think the one thing I do and everyone, we just try to hide it sometimes so much.
Yeah.
That's why I don't think I'll never be a 10 because I'm always going to find a way to try to hide it, not necessarily intentionally from people, but you don't know what to do with it sometimes.
Yeah. What do you think outside of just like the environment changing or things just like overall improving at work? What thing do you think you did or implemented that made the biggest impact on going from a 2 or a 3 to a 6 or a 7?
Um, a little bit was, I mean, I knew the change was very transient as far as like lost a staff, gained a staff. And so
Yeah.
um, probably one of the biggest things I learned, I'll give a ton of credit like to my wife, because she had me listen to a podcast. Do you know who Mel Robbins is? Big
Mhm.
fan of hers. She's a lot of fun. I think she's a very real person, and she created this thing called the Let Them theory. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's a book
Remind me and the audience.
okay. So, and the book just came out. I was actually like, it was on my list. I want to buy it and send it to you just so you can read it. But
Okay.
um, it is how we take over stress and things like in our mind instead of just like, her example was her kids had prom, right? And they were going to go to a taco shack, like senior prom, and they're going to a taco shack. And she like had this narrative like, no, you go to like a nice dinner. This is like the rest of your life. And she's like, just let them do what they want to do as long as like it's safe.
Yeah.
And like giving yourself like when your kid is, trust me, because you're going to go through this, like he's just being a shit for no reason. Like you can't like put A and B together. You just have to like, it's one of those things where you're like, just let them, just like take that internal pressure off yourself of why am I stressed over something that I can't control and that is going to just let it go. Like just let it
Yeah.
go. Let it like, water over a duck's back. Like let's just mitigate that. And like a lot of it is just the internal thought process of that and that concept of being able to be like, is this really affecting me? How is this affecting my life? And if it isn't, let it go. Don't dwell on it. Don't get upset about it. Just let it move past you and let's move on to something else that we can impact and control. It's not that I'm perfect at it. I always have times where I will be doing something and she'll be like, just let them, Tyler, let them. And I was like, okay. But that's probably one of the biggest concepts of moving out of my thinking like the false pretense that I can control things or that I should have control over things and I should just be more transient and let things go so it doesn't affect me in that same way.
I love that.
Yeah.
I
What
think it's
about you
very
on
smart.
a scale from 1 to 10? Where are we right now?
Mm.
Hmm. Yeah.
uh, so funny.
But I mean, in all reality, you have somewhat of like a skewed scale, honest to God,
Yeah.
because you are in one of the most stressful like seasons of life. When you like,
Yeah.
especially when your kid is born to like two, it is all those things that help us recover, like workouts, sleep, all that stuff gets kind of thrown out there. So like in that moment, I wouldn't judge yourself too harshly because this is the time where it's like, oh God, like
Yeah.
it's not a roller coaster. It's like a stressful season of life.
Yeah. And throw an entire business pivot on top of that. Everything's fine. I'm
I'm
fine.
fine.
No, it's so interesting. I think my stress has just shifted, I
Hmm.
think. I don't know if it's gotten better or worse. It has just shifted. So, like in those early months, it was just, all of my stress was Cal related, right? We were dealing with so many challenges. And then we got through those, and I felt like, okay, I can get back to work now. And then I couldn't, and that
And
was stressful.
then I couldn't.
And now, while more of a balance is definitely being struck, and I'm kind of figuring out how to do both, I'm also not. And, I posted something the other day. It was just like, I made this wonderful plan of, how, because before we went on and traveled for Christmas and, put him through various time zone changes and blah, blah, blah. And he went through a nap change and, so his schedule is all different now. Like he was always getting up at 5 a.m. to feed, and I would feed him and I'd put him back down and he would sleep until about 7:30. And so I was like, you know what? Instead of going back to sleep, if I just get to bed a little bit earlier, I can just get up when I feed him and not crawl back into bed afterwards and just be up. And like I can just like utilize that time so I feel like I have more of a balance of time for myself and time to work outside of just his nap time. And the first day back after the new year, did that. He woke up at 5. I fed him. He went back to sleep. I stayed up and I was like, wow, was it a little hard? Did I feel like I needed an extra cup of coffee? Sure. But the time balance of like having those hours to myself in the morning was so impactful. This kid has not woken up after 4 o'clock in the subsequent week and a half that it has been. And I just refuse to operate on 5 hours of sleep.
That's probably
Um,
a good thing, though.
so I literally did that one morning and then haven't done it since. Not because I just want to crawl back into bed, but because, yeah, 5 hours of sleep is just not going to do it for me. And in terms of, could I do that a couple of times? Yeah, but like, at what cost?
Yeah, I mean,
uh,
yeah, but that's not good.
so that's hilarious. So it's just like anytime I feel like I'm like, okay, like, we're kind of cooking along here. Here's where I can, find some balance or find some, whatever. Like the other day, I was like, okay, I got everything done in the morning so that at his nap time, I was just gonna eat and I was gonna get work done. And his nap was so short. And I was like,
It was
well,
a 10-minute nap and no workout done.
I was able to eat. So yeah, like it's just interesting. It has just shifted. I don't think I've gotten necessarily better at managing it. Um, but uh this is a really long-winded way of me saying that I'm probably gonna rank myself at like a solid
I was just gonna say I need a number here. We haven't got to the number.
5 feels generous, but I think I'm gonna give myself a 5 because I have been so disciplined with my exercise. And then like I didn't exercise over Christmas. We were just at Sam's folks' place, and I like, you know, I was constantly having to like, anyways, it was just a challenge getting him to sleep and nap and all of the things when we were there. And for like best chance of success, it is me putting him down. And so I'd be like, okay, I need to go feed him and try and put him down for a nap. And Sam would be like, sweet, I'm gonna go work out. And I'd be like, I'm so happy for you.
It's like your
Uh
eye starts to twitch. Like,
yeah.
uh,
But I probably went like 5 or 6 days without exercising outside of one day we went for a walk. And like I felt like a psychopath when we came home. I'm not kidding. Like, that sounds like I'm exaggerating. I am not. I felt like a psycho. Like you said, the like physical response to stress, especially things that should not be that stressful, was overwhelming. And Sam was like, when was the last time you worked out? And I was like, 7 days ago. And he was like, let's prioritize that this weekend. And I got a workout in. And I was like, wow, I feel like a new human.
yeah,
So,
letting
like,
all those chemicals out and just letting your body kind of relieve. And yeah,
yeah. So, while I want to say a 5, I think my discipline to like exercise, get outside every single day, and all of those things have been making a big impact. And I don't even want to know how I would feel if I was not doing those things.
we might be down to a 3,
We might be down to a 0.
0, 0. We are at 0. We are ground zero here, people.
Yeah. So, uh, I was also thinking about that the other day of just like, I know I'm in a very unique situation with just like everything that I have going on with work and being, in this stage of life. But the I often think about, because like almost like that instance of like coming home and feeling like a crazy person, for a lot of people who don't find that time in their day because they don't have it, or it has not become a priority, you haven't figured out maybe how to work it into the day yet, to have that just be your baseline. Holy shit.
Oh,
How do you get anything done?
I get a Krabby Patty if I don't get a workout in, and if I even like.
Yeah.
But I think there's also a switch that flips at some time where it's like it's a chore, it's like something you don't want to do, to it becomes the opposite. It is like a stress bucket dump for me, and if I don't do it, I get that way where I'm like I really can't envision how I would do without doing it, because I don't, all those, like you said, those physical things that build up in your body, that's like a chance to let it out. Um, and so I always want people to get there, because I was like, once you get there, it's something that is not always the easiest, but one of the most enjoyable parts of your day. And you'll start to not only feel better during it, but a lot of times after it, you just feel like a whole new person.
Yeah. 100%. Hopefully this discussion helped, maybe uh helped you assess your stress,
Sure.
and maybe give you the opportunity to reflect on how well or not well you are managing your own stressors, and also asking yourself, why are we feeling so stressed, um, and addressing that head on. So hopefully the discussion gave you some ideas, but more than anything, just helped you reflect a little bit on where you can show up for yourself a little bit more and manage your stress so you can be a better human.
Yeah, I think if anything, we talked a lot about our stresses and where we've been, and then tried to give you a little bit of how we manage it, different ways that maybe you can implement or at least look at stress more than anything. And then if you ever have any, like questions, concern, comments about it, always feel free to shoot it our way, and we can always elaborate on things a little bit more. But hopefully, there's a lot of different ways to attack it. We gave you some ideas to, even if in a small facet, start thinking about it a little bit differently.
Absolutely. We appreciate you for stopping by, listening in, and we'll see you guys next week.
See you next week. Thanks for being here.